Thank you so much, Philip, for that message, and thank you for the courage of it, the bravery of it. Lydia and I have read your book, If Grace is True, and I'm sure both of us have very strong reactions to it. But I want to start our conversation by asking you this question. Why do you think Christians who follow Jesus, who is love incarnate, get so exercised by this notion of hell and damnation? Doesn't it seem to you to be a bit paradoxical that the first question is, do you believe in hell, as opposed to who do you believe Jesus is? What do you think is primary among his teachings? Well, how do you explain that eagerness to get to this thumbs down thing?
Well, I think it's probably indicative of a relationship that's always been present in the church, and this is the relationship and the struggle between grace and between power. And to be able to create a hell and to send people there who don't believe like we do gives us great power.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's not a power we've been able to exercise with any sense of justice and mercy. We just kind of casually assign people there, and what damage that does.
Philip, you said it took you many years to empty hell. And the book that you've given us, If Grace is True, is really a journey of how your mind has changed over these years from serious judgmentalism on issues of salvation and sexuality and others, to an inclusiveness, an embrace, a compassion for all God's children. Now, would you say that absolutism that defined your early Christian training was a great disservice to the Christian church?
Well, it almost seems to be the place that many of us start. I've been paying attention to how we instruct children, and I think because we fear them straying, we tend to teach them absolutes. The bad thing with that is that as we age, we ought to move away from that and be able to reflect and engage life without such rigid moral boundaries and codes. It really gets in our way, I think, of ethical living and spirituality. There is a real comfort in that kind of absolutism. But the Jesus I read about was really no friend of comfort.
No.
We're really called to be uncomfortable sometimes.
And he made people in his own society uncomfortable. He made the religious leaders in his own society uncomfortable. And you point out one of the ways in which he did that was by establishing this relationship with God, which was Father and even Abba or Daddy. So there was an intimacy, there was a closeness, a familiarity that made, you know, the rabbis of his day want to tear their clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, literally.
And Philip says in the book, you say intimacy with God is like making love.
Yes. Yes.
That's a beautiful image. Say more.
Well, just this idea that isn't, that when we care for someone and we're intimately involved with something, that isn't something we dread or fear. Something we anticipate, we enjoy, it's a rich experience, it's a holy experience. And yet, that never seems to translate in our relationship with God. We often approach God out of a deep sense of fear, of guilt and inadequacy, that somehow I have failed, that I now stand under judgment, and that God is just looking for the least excuse to crush my life.
That's right, to banish us and send us to our room.
And unfortunately, the church hasn't done much to dispel this myth.
Right.
And that's a real tragedy.
You begin your book with the story of Sally, who really was an impetus, sort of a Rubicon moment for you in your understanding of grace. Can you tell us about Sally?
Well, Sally was a woman who had done everything wrong in life, a drug addict. Her neglect of her children led to the death of one of her daughters. something interesting happened, though, to Sally as she aged, and I've noticed that this happens as we age. We grow wiser, and we desire relationships, and our relationships to be more meaningful, and that was true of Sally. And she was beginning to explore a relationship with God, but before she could ever get to church, before she could ever pray the magic prayer that people say we must pray, she died.
And you had to do the funeral.
Yes.
And you were one of the ones who had scorned her during her unfortunate life.
And
Yes.
judged her. Yes.
So how did her redemptive chapter in her life, as you say she turned, how did that turn you?
Oh, this is the wonderful thing about being a pastor. You get a front row seat to humanity's struggle. And one thing you learn if you're a pastor is not only the brokenness of people, but your own inward brokenness. And so you get over this illusion eventually that you're perfect, and that's why God called you to ministry. And as soon as you give up that illusion about yourself, you're able to see others more charitably.
You explore this idea, or reality, I would say, personally, that our experience of God is as legitimate as our experience of Scripture.
That's right.
And as our experience of doctrine and dogma as it's handed down from generation to generation. And you talk about how people tend to be suspicious of experience because it's subjective and it's personal and it's idiosyncratic and who are you? And you know, we know who Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were, but who the heck are you, right?
Who's Philip Gulley?
And yet, you know, I really resonate with that because, and I think everyone really resonates with it because we wouldn't be Christian if we didn't have these experiences that somehow make us aware of this other presence.
That's right.
That is compassionate and merciful.
Yes.
You know, and loving and rescuing.
Yes.
You
And
know?
everything is experience.
Yes.
The Bible, what is the Bible? It's a story of people's experiences with God.
Exactly.
What are dogma? What are doctrines and creeds? Well, they're codified descriptions of our experience with God.
That's right.
And the question is then, if we take all of those other people's experiences of God so seriously, why can't we take our own experience
And you
of God
say
seriously?
in the book, the premise
Thank
of
you.
the book is that God saves every person.
That's right.
Now, you were so on fire with this revolutionary change in your own understanding of the faith that you sought out people that you were taught to suspect.
Yes,
Can you
yes.
talk
And,
about
and if you grow up in the church, you're always given a list of people to avoid.
And you encountered a multitude of people. Tell us about.
And poor people and people of different races and cultures. People who I'd been taught were cultic Mormons. And you go and you engage, and what you see in these people is what the old Quakers used to say: you see that of God in every person.
Right.
That
And you
divine
saw
spark.
that in Kevin. Tell us about him.
Kevin was actually a man that Jim knew. Jim, the co-author of the book, is active in prison ministry. And one thing that's amazed me in listening to Jim's story about working with convicts and going into prisons is the depth of grace among many of the men that he's encountered. We often dismiss them as morally inferior, or they wouldn't be in jail in the first place. We tell ourselves that simply isn't true. Many of the men that Jim has encountered in prison were just simply broken people who didn't have our blessings of love in life. And in them, Jim has met some profoundly gracious, wonderful people who've transformed his life in a powerful way.
I'm so struck by how that follows Jesus' example. He hung out with the people that you should never touch. You know, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the sinners, the poor. You know, these were you know, his fans. You know, and the people that he sought out. And we know that, you know, Peter and even Paul, in the time that they knew in prison, found out that that was really a venue where souls could be saved.
Sure. And you know, the thing about it, Delle, is that Jesus, of course, encouraged us to visit the prisoners.
Yes.
Now, we always assume Jesus told us that so we could save them.
Right.
You know what I think? I think Jesus told us that so they could save us.
That's beautiful.
Talk about your mind, how your mind changed on the issue of sexuality and your friend that you grew up with.
Yes. Well, it happened easily for me because my younger brother is gay. And so suddenly something that I'd been taught all my life was an abomination. I'm confronted with that when my little brother comes out of the closet, whom I love. He's just a wonderful man. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly these neat little categories that I had drawn in my life no longer made sense. Mm-hmm. And I had to think again about what it means to be sexually moral, mm-hmm. and to be sexually responsible and loving, and it really changed my point of view.
Oh, I think your book is such an invitation to all of us to expand our notion of God, to expand our notion of how much love He has, mm-hmm. for zillions, mm-hmm. for zillions, mm-hmm. and how hungry He is to be close to all of us.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you so much for the gift of this book.
And I love that image of the father putting his little boy to bed and saying that God will be with you. Don't be afraid of the dark. And mm-hmm. the little boy said, but I thought there'd be somebody with skin on him. But it's wonderful. Philip, you're terrific, and we thank you.